Hey, it's the MonitorBase team here. We are here with myself. I'm Lily, the VP of Business Relations here at MonitorBase.
William LeBaron. I'm the VP of Business Development at MonitorBase.
And I'm Louis Zitting. I'm CEO and founder.
We're having this conversation that we find is really interesting about the mindset for how to manage all of the contacts from the beginning of how you might reach that contact, an impression, a conversation, all the way down to a funded loan. Louis, what has been the consistent mindset or the way that you find loan officers think about this process? Or is it a pipeline?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people think of it like a pipeline, which is kind of a straight line from you get a referral and it goes hopefully through the process to a funded loan. But, anywhere in marketing, you've got to think of the pipeline as more of a funnel that funnels down to that closed, finished transaction. Because not every deal is going to close. In this market, obviously, there's other market factors that are making it more difficult for things to go from one level of the pipeline down. So we thought this was important to kind of bring it up, share this as a little bit of value to our users, just for food for thought for, what can you be doing in the different steps of the pipeline so that you have good quality output like you did when times weren't so slow.
This isn't a new idea by any means. I'm sure we're all familiar with kind of that sales funnel idea or that process, but it's something that, especially seeing a visual, it can change your mindset and perspective to help you be creative with how you're adding into that funnel or how those contacts are moving through that funnel and turning into an actual funded loan.
I think the pipeline thing is an interesting thought because people generally, like when a loan officer is describing their work, they have a pipeline of deals in process. And if you don't look far enough back, it's kind of like what you focus on improves. And if you're focused only on the pipeline, that pipeline starts at an application, and that application is a referral from a real estate agent of someone who's already chosen a home and they're ready to buy, right? That's the common thing. There's a lot more happening prior to that, and not focusing on those earlier steps, really earlier in that funnel, is neglecting opportunity. And so I think a lot of it, you mentioned visually, optimizing a funnel at each step, that kind of the usefulness is being able to break it into categories and then understand, okay, this is an area we can affect. We can make an impact here in order to get more into our pipeline. Because that's all, that's ultimately the goal. But it has to start with a thought process that goes earlier than we traditionally look at our pipeline.
Taking a look at this first wide, part or stage of our funnel, we have coined it the impression stage. What is encompassed in the impression stage?
Well, really, this is, how does anybody first see your face, your brand, just know your existence? So, up above the funnel, you've got people out there in your marketplace or the homebuyer universe that are interested at some point in buying a house or selling a house, or even refinancing works similar. And so the first step is that an impression as far as like one of your realtors mentioning your name to somebody, or somebody might see, some advertising piece you're doing on Facebook, or just, see a post that you've done on Facebook or Instagram. I guess a lot more people are on Instagram. That's the big wide top of the funnel. And it's really just, that connection with you, even though there hasn't been a conversation yet.
One of the things I think is interesting to think about from an impression perspective is anytime you create a partner relationship, that person is going to be the first impression for a whole set of people, a connection to you. And so being able to tap into that, a network of partners is going to give you that second degree connection, but that first impression to a whole set of people that would otherwise never hear about you, never know you existed. And so from an impressions perspective, that's just top of your funnel is almost all those people in your network that might have some way to hear about you. And it's not, that we need to be standing on a roof and with a loudspeaker saying, everyone, we do mortgages. There's only a small percentage of people that need a loan every month. And it's about being in the network and connected in that network where your name has a chance of coming up. You got to get into the ball game.
That stage, a lot of people want to skip because it doesn't seem really effective to go out and do social media posts because you're not instantly getting engagement, or doing branding type marketing, right? Or meeting with realtors just to build the relationship. But consumers got to go through that impression part before they get to engagements. And so we don't want to overlook that. And if you are building ways that people can get an impression on your brand up front, there is eventually that's going to create more output.
And I know that the impression is kind of the word that specifically social media uses when that, visual meets the eye of somebody on social media. But you think about it and it really does make an impression. There's a company that's local to me where if I drive down the freeway, they usually have 3 billboards in a row in either direction, and each billboard plays off of the next. They'll use catchy song lyrics and kind of a play on words. And even though I think they're a mortgage company or real estate, and even though I'm not in the market at the moment, it actually has left an impression on me where I think about it and I think, oh, that's funny every single time I drive down the freeway.
Yeah, and there's plenty of stats that say, people need to have this many impressions of you or your brand before they'll engage. And so they're probably just trying to get that done all at once with 3 billboards in a row. It's definitely unique, but so we'll kind of move on from that one and move on to the next stage, which is engagements. So this is somebody's actually interacting with some of your content, whether it's an advertisement of some sort or an email that you've sent, or maybe they're actually reaching out to you from the realtor that gave them your name, right? So what do you guys think we can do to help our users expand on the engagements part of the funnel?
It's always a question of, do you need more quantity coming into the funnel? Do you need to expand the network and the amount of impressions occurring? Because engagement to me is consumption. I can be scrolling through a social media feed, or I can be walking past a poster or a billboard or something, and there's an impression where I see it, and there's an engagement where I read it, or I stop and I watch the video. It's a question of where do you need to optimize? Because not everyone's going to be the same thing. For some of you, it's like no one's going to hear about you because you don't put any kind of information out there. And that's often like a perfectionist issue. It's like, I don't want to put something out there that isn't perfect. It doesn't perfectly represent me. It's like, well, if you put something out there and it doesn't perfectly represent you, it did get your name out there. If you don't put something out there because you don't have something that perfectly represents what you want it to represent, then you're guaranteed to have nobody see or hear about you.
Right.
And so I think early in the funnel, particularly, that's where you have to prioritize quantity in some instances. Quality is important, but not creating an ad or sending an email or putting a social media post is because, you don't have the exact perfect thing to say or put together. So you don't do anything. The end result is worse than doing something and having it flop with half of the people in some cases. It's like, worst case, they're going to just keep scrolling in a lot of, really, unless you make a big mistake, right? You can't go too crazy on social media. But realistically, chances are if you don't do a great job, most of the people will just scroll by. They'll never engage. But if you don't do anything, then you got nothing out of it. So to me, engagement is still a quantity game more than an optimizing messaging game.
And that's when you come into someone's conscious mind instead of just subconsciously scrolling through ads, when they think, okay, this is interesting. I'm going to click on it, maybe read something, maybe a blog or whatever that might be. That's that conscious part of the mind. And then if they're impressed enough, or if they're in the right stage of their home buying cycle, then I think that's when it goes next to the conversations part of the funnel.
And you mentioned clicking on something. I think it's worth mentioning that sometimes we forget to include a call to action in whatever visual we have. So sometimes it's helpful, like a YouTuber, and you're like, subscribe to my channel. It might sound silly because the subscribe button is right there, but having that call to action might make them think about it and put it at the forefront of their mind.
It makes a huge difference. We've done so much with advertising where we had something valuable and we didn't, tell them, hey, next step, do this. And it just, far few people do that. They're like, okay, that was good information, I'm moving on. So yeah, call to actions are important.
And engagements always lead to, well, engagements should lead to conversations, which is the next part of our funnel and where we kind of feel like the magic really starts to happen.
This is when sales, and the sales culture comes in, right? If you get to the point of a conversation, you guys all know what to do, right? Provide great value, provide education, solve problems for them. Something that we would suggest is don't assume at this point that you're in the application stage. This is just conversations. You're trying to build some trust in a relationship, and that means giving value. So talk about them, ask them, what are they trying to do? When are they trying to do it? Just get them, if you can get them talking and opening up, then you're far more likely to keep that person through the next few parts of the funnel.
I think the biggest thing is when you're considering conversations, I don't know, I think about myself, like, what kind of conversation do I want to have? Do I want to have a conversation about what is interesting to Louis, or do I want to have a conversation about what is interesting to me? And if you're talking about starting and engaging a conversation, it's about them, not about us. And that's always kind of challenging because we get someone and they're talking to us and it's like, let me tell you about my favorite new hobby that you have no interest in. And I might be really enthusiastic, but that will only go so far. So how do you make the conversation about them? How do you add value? And you can do that by just asking them questions. Ask someone about their very favorite subject in the world themselves, and you'll find someone talks and you create a connection. And those are the people that I find that I like the most when I meet someone new and they ask questions like, this person really wants to understand me. And that's where I feel like I connect with people.
Yeah, it's human nature. We want, we're interested when somebody's interested in us, right? So, just think of all of the marketing emails that you get or messages through LinkedIn. You can tell that, these people aren't going to get much engagement when the first thing they talk about is the product that they offer, right? It's like they start the first thing saying, hi, I work at this company and I want to tell you about this. And so people are busy. It's like, you're a stranger, so I don't really want to know about your company and I don't have time for that. So I'm moving on, right? Where, just observe yourself looking through your marketing emails that you get or any messages that you get on LinkedIn. If somebody says, hey, I know you because of this, or we talked together 2 years ago, or hey, you're part of that whatever group that we met at, right? So bring the attention to them and something about them and start it that way rather than trying to start the conversation talking about your product.
And since we're talking about conversion as well and which of these people end up falling off of the funnel for a while, I think sometimes it can be those people who feel really scared, especially first-time homebuyers who have never done this before. They might not even have anyone in their family who has done it before. So they might feel very alone, might feel really worried. And sometimes when you're a mortgage professional, that's your everyday job. You're so used to the lingo. You know exactly how every part of the process works, but it makes such a big difference to slow down and really listen to their concerns. And those people might be more hesitant. They might require a little bit more explaining, a little bit more conversation. Obviously, you know all this, you're the professional, but it does make a huge difference to have those people feel like their needs are being understood and met.
Yeah, and on that point, if you start talking the lingo that you know and they don't, that can create confusion. And when people are confused, then they pull away. So, they're not going to say, "Wait, I don't understand what you're talking about," or "Please explain that more," because they don't want to look like they don't understand a concept. So, make sure you're being detailed and pause and say, "Does that make sense?" Right? Or can I expand right there? But yeah, this conversation stage, the point we want to make is this isn't the bottom of the funnel when somebody calls you the first time. Just consider they're entering your universe, you're trying to make friends, and then we're going to move through the next few stages of the funnel.
I always kind of think, as we're talking about like moving through the stages, I like to view things through the lens of how I consume content, because like I'll go out and I'll write a marketing email and I'll be like, that's awesome. That's perfect. And then if I take a break and I come back to throwing my water bottle, if I take a break and I come back to that marketing email after I've written it and I think it was such a good job, um, I can look at it from the perspective of, if I'm the consumer of this, I'm going to view that totally different. If I just consciously change that perspective. To me, that conversation as it transitions to kind of nurturing, it's about looking at it from the perspective of the person you're working with or you're having the conversation with. And if that person is reaching out to you on social media because you made a post and they ask you a question about something, you don't have to transition all those conversations over to mortgage, right? If you spend the time just connecting with people and engage with them where they're at, what they're asking about, because you may have posted your workout on something, right? Or you may have posted a vacation or a hobby. That's, I think, where I think we probably discount, because that connection of shared interest is what makes someone like you.
Yep.
And if you connect with them in that context, um, you have a huge advantage. You've created a relationship where, if everything to you is too quickly transitioned to like, how do I help you with a mortgage? Or, oh,
Right.
these people keep responding to my workout posts or my golf posts or my fishing posts, whatever that is, and I get no engagement on my mortgage post. So I'm going to stop doing. It's like that engagement is great. Not a lot of people need a mortgage. If you build a bunch of relationships and people like you and they engage with you there, I think there's a patience part of that nurture that's just like, you've got to talk to a lot of people. What does Jeff say? You've got to kiss a lot of frogs is the joke. But you have a lot of conversations going. It's okay that they responded to something you said, or you got off the topic of mortgages and you never got back around to it. I think that nurturing portion of a conversation, allow it to naturally progress like a conversation will progress. Allow yourself to connect with people as people connect without the ulterior of, how do I get this back to a topic of a mortgage? If you do that, eventually when they do need your product, there's a much better chance they're going to come to you. If you
Yeah.
don't do that and you're always just pushing mortgage, they will make sure that they never come to you when that time comes. And that's maybe a little bit harsh, but I think that's a lot of the reality. I don't like to be pressured, but if Louis keeps posting fly fishing pictures, and I like them and I enjoy that content and I respond to him, and then later when I do need a mortgage in a year and a half, and Louis is someone I connect with on a regular basis, it's a different situation.
Yeah, it's easier to have a conversation. It's easier to go into the nurture stage. And something I think a lot of people want to jump from one stage to the next. You really want to think, I'm just trying to get somebody from this stage to the next one. And you could really improve your skills on just getting someone from impressions to engagement, and then focus on engagements to conversation, and then conversations to nurture. And I think a lot of people think you go conversations to applications, but all you're trying to do in the conversation stage is that they will go into the nurture stage, meaning you can call them back again in a month and they're going to answer. And that's a whole big step in itself. If you're doing cold calling and you're trying to build a pipeline, unless you're building these conversations, you're really unlikely to talk to those people again. So yeah, focus on getting that to the next stage. And I think a lot of people skip the thought of the nurture stage, but if you think about it, the conversations that you have, these people aren't ready to buy a home today. And so there's going to be a nurture stage, and a lot of people in that nurture stage of the funnel. And that's where I think there's a lot of improvement right now that can be made. And I think that's a big part of the funnel that's growing for people, or it should be, because the minute the rates come down a little bit, or there's a little more inventory in their area, they can move into the application stage. So I think successful loan officers right now are building the top of their funnel, getting people into the nurture stage the best they can, even if they're not 100% ready to go.
And what I love about the nurture stage is, as William mentioned, it's about building a relationship, but it's also where you get to flourish and be the expert, because everybody has concerns and questions and things that they need to think through, and you are the expert in your field, in your industry, and you can provide valuable educational content to these people who need your help. My sister she's many years ago, she was looking to get her first home, and she connected with a lender who was really informative and educational, and just spent a lot of time discussing, every detail that my sister had questions about. And she nurtured her so much that my sister bought that home, refinanced, bought another home, refinanced, bought another home. So she's done like 6 loans with her. And she comes to her with all these questions about her financial future. And I mean, obviously, that started with this lender being a wonderful, helpful, nurturing educator in the space, and it turned into multiple loans where my sister is never going to go to anybody else ever again.
Yeah, and again, in this stage, it's not about getting them into the nurture stage and then calling them and saying, "Hey, are you ready to take an app?" If you can get them in the nurture stage and you can provide value, they're going to tell you when it's time to do an application, or we're going to give you an alert that says, "Hey, we think they're close," or they just applied somewhere else. But build up that nurture stage, and that's something that you can do every day, is nurture people in that stage of the funnel. Say, "How are you doing? Can I tell you some more about what's going on in the market? I know, you can even tell them, hey, I don't think this is a great time for you, but I have you on my list, and the second that things line up, I'm going to give you a call." And then it's more of a service than a hardcore sale.
It makes you feel like you're on the same team. If the person has already talked to you and they've explained to you their concerns, and maybe they're just worried about a rate, then when you come to them with that good news, maybe they've improved their credit or the rate is at a really good point that day, and you call them up and you say, "Hey, let's lock this today," it really makes them feel like you're working for them specifically.
Well, and that's especially true for refinance type transactions, because there are people that would love to do debt consolidation, do something, and it's more rate dependent. So there's quite a bit of pent up demand because of rates from a current homeowner perspective. But a lot of the restriction in the market right now is really capped because of inventory. You just can't find a home that fits what you need. That's largely what's slowing the mortgage market down right now. So in an environment where inventory is an issue, that person might be shopping for a while, and there's no amount of pressure or anything you can do or really they can do that makes a difference. We're just waiting for an offer to get accepted or the right house to come up that's going to fit what they need. And so in a scenario like that, being in touch, being empathic, understanding their situation and being helpful, and then just maintaining some amount of contact. Again, that's not like, "Hey, Louis, just seeing if you're ready to do that house purchase yet." It's like, no, like, "Hey, how's the house shopping going?" Or this is some information that might be helpful. That kind of connection, I think. And again, the nurture sequence is where you're starting to get more into the actually talking about a loan scenario. But even then, I think you can do a lot of nurturing without ever talking about anything industry specific.
Give them updates on the market. If you listen to Barry Habib and do the MBS Highway thing, that's where you can feed them those, market updates. Like, here's what's going on. Still not a lot has changed, but we're getting there, and I'm going to call you when the time comes. And really, kind of what we've been talking about here, from nurture to application, it's not as much a decision by the consumer just to decide, you know what, now I'm ready to do it. Once they are in that funnel, then they want to do it. It's about ability. Like, when do the abilities line up, like their credit, their down payment, prices in their area, or inventory in their area. Once all the stars align, they're going to go to application mode. And so, don't feel like you need to do a hardcore sell from nurture to application. You're just, keeping friendships with them, and they'll tell you when the abilities have changed to where they can go to the application stage.
We've talked about this funnel as kind of a general experience for all loan officers. Let's talk a little bit more about how the MonitorBase alerts also work in this perspective of the funnel.
I think everybody, understands our inquiry alerts, and those are, you're being alerted when somebody's, down at the bottom of the funnel with somebody else, but you still got the ability to engage, because somebody might have given them a bad funnel experience to where they took them straight to application without any of that nurture or education. And that's not a very strong relationship. If you've done that nurturing, it's very easy for you to pull them back as a customer. If you think about our migration alerts, that's really where people come from. If somebody's had credit issues, they're going from that nurture stage into application. Then we've got our predictive alerts that really we're going to feed you people that are likely to move through the funnel faster because the ability part is there. It doesn't mean that you don't have to go through the steps, but it just means far more of those are likely to move through the steps faster than just a random impression from social media of you have no clue of, what their behavior is like, what their credit's like. So the predictive is really helping you put more in the funnel that's more likely to move down faster.
So partly it's like you think about it as impressions. You have your network, your audience, like those are your contacts, all the people in your network. When you get some of the alerts that we deliver, it's almost escalating it to say, hey, when you're working on your regular funnel, your network, people are raising their hand, they're engaging and they're reaching out to you and they're starting conversations because they are self-identifying that they are interested in engaging with someone like you. That might be because the information you put out was really interesting to them. It might be because they're starting to think about a mortgage and they're beginning to warm up that conversation. So a lot of the time when you get these predictive alerts or these other alerts, we're saying this person is very likely to be ready for this conversation stage. They're already inside of your network. That you've already had impressions on them, either past client or prospect, or they're in your MonitorBase account, so they have some amount of relationship. And we're trying to kind of escalate that because that's kind of, I would say, putting someone into that conversation stage where you're going to be able to reach out and engage. And then it becomes just a nurture game. Whereas, if you're going with without a software like MonitorBase, just general population, if you're guessing how many people in your network you should engage with, you should try and start a conversation with, you've got like a less than a 1% chance that person needs a mortgage right now. Whereas a lot of our alerts are there, the credit trigger alert, that's like 100% chance that person is interested in a mortgage right now. And predictive alerts, it's a basically a 10 to 20% chance that person is interested in a mortgage in the next couple of months. So you've got a much different approach than just general network population where you've got less than that 1%. It's like, hey, these people are the ones you should be starting to have conversations with and trying to engage and get into that nurture stage. That's how I look at this funnel as it pertains to MonitorBase.
MonitorBase is like you're doing an x-ray of all of the contacts in your funnel and it's showing you exactly who you should nurture. And then it's just nurture, nurture, nurture on those contacts.
Yeah, which ones can you pull to the next stage? Predictive, it's putting people in the engagement stage. You're getting those little notifications that they opened the offer. And it's up to you to turn that into a conversation stage. Some of them will email you and say, yeah, I'm interested. But if they've engaged, they've opened that email, they've looked at your offer, then those are some of the best ones to make a call to, because then you can pull them into the conversation stage. And that's really the value of the predictive, is get more people upstream so that you're not talking to them when they're already down in the application stage with somebody else. And so that you have to do a little catch up, but get them into your funnel earlier in the process so that they get to that application stage with you rather than with their bank or credit union or some online lender.
And we even do things on our side that help increase, the number of contacts that you can put into the funnel. With our contact enrichment, you don't need addresses. You can put names and emails or names and phone numbers in to cast that net a little bit wider and create more impressions at the top of the funnel. And the wonderful thing about this is, even with the MonitorBase data, the greatest asset is you and your relationship and the nurture that you give to that consumer. That's really, the piece of the puzzle that cannot be replaced. Thanks for participating in this conversation with us. This has been really fun for us. Please comment, share any ideas that you have for either adding volume to the funnel or converting better through any of the stages of the funnel. What has worked for you? Let us know. And be sure to subscribe to the MonitorBase blog for any other market updates or shared ideas in the future.